Hey everybody, welcome to CAF Warbird Tube, the show where we talk about World War II, aviation, history, and so much more. Warbird Tube is produced by the Commemorative Air Force, the world's largest flying museum. Our mission is to educate, inspire, and honor through flight and living history experiences. The CAF began the Warbird movement more than 65 years ago, and thanks to the support of individuals like you, we continue to grow strong. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and now our host, Steve Buss. Thanks for watching and keep 'em flying.
Welcome to another episode of CAF Warbird Tube. And tonight we will continue our series on the 12 Planes of Christmas, featuring one of the TORA Zeros, 0111. We'll be talking to the two gentlemen you see on the screen in just a moment. But we would like to ask you, if you haven't already done so, please subscribe, like, or share any of our information from CAF Media TV. We'd love to have you as a subscriber. And if you do subscribe, especially on YouTube, hit that little bell icon. That'll send you a notification anytime we go live or have a new broadcast for you. So again, thank you to all of you who are joining us, whatever platform you're watching on tonight. Happy holidays, and welcome, please, Doug Durr and Patrick Hutchins, who are with the TORA. And the act itself is now 50 years old. These guys haven't quite been flying that long, but they've been with the TORA for a while. So good evening, gentlemen. Welcome to the show.
Good evening.
Glad to be here.
Well, Doug, let's start with you. How did you get involved in TORA?
Oh man, I had an airplane up here in Conroe, Texas, and at the time, Gary Hudson and Bob Covington were flying TORA. And I'm a sucker for big round engines, and just kind of fell into it from there. And Patrick and Dan Reedy and myself and Craig Salerno kind of all came up at the same time and more or less parallel paths, and we've been doing it about the same long, 20 years or so.
All right. And you are now TORA lead, correct?
I am. If you want the job, we can work that out.
So, what aside from flying with the group, what does the title of lead entail for you?
The two biggest things are scheduling and trying to reach far enough ahead that we keep the airplanes and people busy without being absurd, which is more difficult than it might seem. And the other part is the business of TORA and making sure we have the ability to continue this going forward. And we're dealing with, at this point, where all 10 airplanes are 7 decades old or better. Mm-hmm. These were not low maintenance airplanes when they were new, and they're certainly not now. So, Patrick's issue with 111 is one of the things that really worries you. It in this case, it was not a safety of flight issue. It was no problem at all, and it happened at a terrific place and time. But the reality is, we're down an airplane for a year now. Now we're looking at something like a 90+% dispatch rate for 7-decade-old Warbirds. That's not a trivial thing.
No, not at all. And a testament not only to the manufacturing of those aircraft, but to you and your volunteers who help keep them flying. It's a big job.
It's a full-time job, and these guys spend a lot of time and money keeping them all going. Yeah.
Good. Patrick, you are the caretaker of 0111, and we'll talk a little bit about what transpired with that airplane last year and why it's a part of the 12 Planes of Christmas this year. But you are a second-generation TORA pilot.
Yes, sir. I was. So Dad, there's Dad. He started flying TORA in 1976. I was 16. I did solo on my 16th birthday, but it would take many years of watching TORA and going to air shows with him before I kind of had the means or the time off work to really get involved and start being an air show pilot. So I banner towed for a couple of years to build some time and tailwheel time. Had to go get the commercial license, get the formation card and all that, and then flew my first show at Dyess Air Force Base in 2004. And so, but yeah, I watched it for many years. never really knew for sure that I would do it or would ever, be able to do it. But once I got my sights set on it, it took about 5 years from the time I decided I was going to do it until I flew my first air show. So some qualifications time, and you have to have 1,000 hours of flight time to fly a CAF airplane in an air show. And I was sitting around 600 hours when I soloed 111 at TORA practice one year. So that's where the banner towing came in for a couple of years. And as soon as I got to that 1,000 hours, I told the banner tow folks, see ya, and went through my first show.
Excellent. Well, for those who are not familiar with TORA, and I really find it hard to believe no one hasn't heard of it, but it is the recreation of the attack on Pearl Harbor, and there's three real elements, three basic elements to the entire show, and all three of them work together and depend on each other. It's the planes and the pilots, it's the narration, and it's the pyro. And talk a little bit about how that all comes together.
I'll let Doug take that one.
Well, they are all three part and parcel of the same thing, and you really don't have a show without any one of the other. Obviously, without the airplanes, you got stuff blowing up in the field, and folks are talking in the background. But wow, that's pretty boring. If you don't have the pyro, the airplanes are flying around in circles, and to be honest, that's a little boring. And without the narration, it's just sort of a complete mystery what the hell's going on. So it really does take all three, and there's not one more important than the other. Those are critical functions. We got to have them. So our narration, we're working on actually building a narration staff now. We've been leaning on Ray for years, and finally got a couple more in the pipeline.
Good.
Pilots were always looking for people who want to be a part of TORA. That's different from a pilot. That's people who want to be a part of TORA. Mm-hmm. And the pyro group is enormous and sort of amorphous and nationwide. And our pyro league can pick these folks up as we go to different shows around the country. So for those that like to play with gasoline and dynamite and det cord, we got a place for you too.
That is true. And the pyro team also does shows outside of the TORA act as well. They do other air shows.
They do. Probably the biggest one is Oshkosh. Most of that's TORA pyro doing that entire week-long extravaganza, which takes almost all of them and pretty much wipes them out for 2 months.
Right.
But we'll do little air shows as well, and use those as training opportunities and to get the pyro folks used to working in an air show environment.
Great. Well, let's talk a little bit about 0111. Talked a little bit about its history, but how come it's in the 12 Planes of Christmas this year?
Well, I thought it'd be an opportunity to help us recoup a little bit of the money that we had to spend on that engine. It was very expensive. All in all, it was right around $70,000 by the time some of the accessories, and once there's metal in the oil, now you're dealing with the oil tank, the oil cooler, just replacing an engine without having to deal with all of those other components that could have metal in them is a little less complicated. Hoses, just on and on and on. So that all happened, and I asked, could we nominate or submit it to be in? Of course, 2020 and 2021 with our the COVID thing, there were little air shows, and we didn't make very much income for the team or for the airplanes those 2 years. So those two added together, plus that expense, and luckily enough, 111 was able to be submitted and a part of it, and we appreciate it.
Well, you touch on an important point is that this is all volunteers. Even though you're going to air shows, you're charging, an appearance fee, you're receiving, hotel rooms, gasoline, all the things that air show performers get. But the profits that come out of touring the aircraft go back into the TORA organization.
Indeed. We obviously have a bank balance at the end of the year, and any profit we made gets divided between the 10 airplanes. So talking to people on the ramp all the time at air shows about how that works, I talk about how the airplanes get paid and we're volunteers.
There you go. It's a nice way of looking at it. And it's a formula that's worked for 50 years to keep TORA on the road.
Almost. I understand back in the original days, these guys did everything out of their pocket until somebody one day said, wait a minute, now this is a unique demonstration and we should be charging for it. So that's how that became. So I'm not sure if it lasted this long if it hadn't have been turned into a business with a decent profit margin to keep them flying.
That's right. So exactly what happened with TORA 111 at Wings Over Houston last year, 2021?
Well, even though well maintained and all changed at all the recommended intervals, it still had a problem with the main bearings and started making a terrible noise. And so we flew the show Friday and Saturday, and that's taxiing in, actually, like Doug mentioned earlier. It was at a good place and a good time, and it wasn't a safety of flight issue. It happened on the taxi. And then the next morning, just to crank it up to see, if that had gone away or whatever, it was twice as loud. It was actually louder than the engine. So pulled the mixture a few days later, dumped all the oil out of it, and found the metal. So we took it off and shipped it to Oklahoma, where there's a company that rebuilds these. And they told me in the beginning, it's going to be at least 7 months. That's the lead time on these things. And so we said, so be it. So fortunately, I was able to fly a couple of our other airplanes in air shows this year, which not only helped fill a spot, helped keep me current and proficient.
Very good. And again, we are trying to raise some money for TORA's 0111. If you'd like to contribute, please go to the CAF website, click on the 12 Planes of Christmas link, and look for TORA 111. It's right there. So is the plan to use this money to purchase another engine, a spare engine, or use it sort of as a reserve?
Honestly, it will be to fill the hole, help fill the hole that the new engine left in the airplane's account.
Okay.
But
those are big numbers. I mean, I don't know if we want to talk about dollars, but here's the reality: is an overhauled engine right now is running a year lead time, and it's $70,000. If you do the prop at the same time, that's running us about $15,000. If you got to put blades on it, it goes up from there. The last 2 years have driven the price from ugly to absolutely absurd. And again, it's the price is bad. The airplanes work for a living and they can pay for it, once in a while, but they got to go 10 years. But it's the lead time. It's being down, having part of your fleet down for a year that is really hard on us.
Yeah. So with that lead time, now that's a pretty common number in the Warbird world, is almost a year to replace an engine, no matter what aircraft it is.
Yeah, it seems to be, whether you're flying a Mustang or something with a 2800, it's just taken ridiculous. And that's after you get it off and into the shop, which for some airplanes is a much bigger deal than ours. We can throw ours on a trailer. We've all got pickups. We can make it happen. It's only 300 or 400 miles up to Oklahoma.
Right.
But wow, the big engines, that's not a trivial thing.
Very, very true. About how long did it take to take the engine off? And conversely, when you got the engine back, how long did it take to put back on?
Well, we had the engine off in just a few days, and when it came back, Doug, myself, and a couple of others, we had it all mounted in just a day. And then it was about another week to get all the hoses put back, all the accessories bolted back on, and then you test run, and you find out, well, one hose wasn't supposed to go there, and you got a little oil on the ground, and then you figure out where that hose was really supposed to go, and then there's some break-in before you're going to take off across the country in the thing. So I flew it around locally and watching everything very closely, and everything went well. You run it at a higher power than normal cruise, so the first air show was Wichita, and so I wasn't able to fly up there with the group because I was going a lot faster than the rest of them. And so you spend some time doing that until the oil consumption goes down noticeably, and then you can figure that all the piston rings have seated in the cylinders, and you're broke in by then. So expect this engine to be in service for the next 10 to 15 years.
Good, good. You mentioned the oil consumption. Now, these engines are notorious for consuming oil even on a good day, but what's the difference between the oil consumption on a break-in period versus just normal operations?
Well, it might use a gallon every couple of hours or 3 hours maybe. That's kind of, that wasn't very conservative. Let's say 5 hours it might use a gallon. Well, once it's broke in, you can fly 10 to 15 hours and not notice any oil consumption once they're broke in. I was flying 113 in the beginning of the season while 111 was down, and I flew it about 10 to 15 hours, and I never put any oil in it. So a good tight engine that's not burning any oil or leaking any oil, they're very efficient on oil consumption.
Good. How many shows did TORA have in 2022?
Ooh, let me look at my calendar.
Yeah, I think it was 12 all up if you count a couple of the smaller shows. So
yeah, it was 12.
We 10 to 12 is pretty much a full schedule for us. The team kind of goes through phases. We've when Patrick and I started, most of the guys were retired, so they could do 15, 16 shows a year. And now most of the team is still working for a living, and it's really hard to pull off 16, 17 shows a year because, you run out of vacation.
Right.
So, we figured 10 or 12 is a pretty full schedule, and it will be. I mean, this coming year in 2023, we're going to open in Homestead, Florida, south of Miami, and in July we're going to be in Seattle. So they get a lot of miles.
What are some of the other highlights that are coming up in the 2023 season?
Scott Air Force Base. We've got Seymour Johnson. Wow, and of course I got the schedule on the computer, which I can't see right now, but.
You can see it on your website for sure, right?
Yeah, we're kind of all over. It'll be a high mileage year.
Great.
And we still good for Keesler and Biloxi, I think.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
So just coming off the International Council of Air Shows convention in Las Vegas, first part of December, did you have most of your shows locked down by then, or were there some walk-ups that occurred during the show?
Only a couple. Most of our 23 schedule was locked up. Currently, most of our 24 schedule is locked up, and we've got 3 on the books for 2025. So, get here early.
Never too early to reserve.
Right. I mean, it's where you want to be. You really want to be scheduling out 2 years in advance, but it's a nice place to be.
Yeah. So we've talked the technical end of it, the engine, the airplanes, scheduling, money, all that sort of thing. But what is it for both of you that keeps you involved with this? I mean, it's a labor of love. Like we said, you're doing it volunteer time, you're using vacation time and that sort of thing. But what keeps you a part of the TORA family?
Well, I'll go first, be brief, and let Doug tell you his side of it. I tell you, for the uniqueness of what TORA is, and I say this a lot of times, it's an honor and a privilege to be a TORA pilot. And that's one thing. When I started this, veterans, we got to meet many veterans, many Pearl Harbor survivors. Now they're going away. We don't see them as much. There's not as many left. But talking to veterans, talking to people out on the ramp about these airplanes and the show, and we get to give this living history lesson, and they don't teach in school anymore about the Japanese attacking Pearl Harbor. So I always say kids can come to an air show and learn about history. So just being part of it and the camaraderie, we have a good time on the road. We all get along well, and we have our evenings where we go out to dinner, and it's a lot of fun. We wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't a lot of fun.
I think that's all true. I would add, to some degree, most civilians don't get to fly airplanes like this. It's aggressive. It's close. There's lots of airplanes in the sky, and the reality is it's pretty intense for the period of the show. For me, it's Pearl Harbor is such an important thing in the United States history. That's just a watershed event. It's an absolutely seminal event in American history. Before that, we were at least legally neutral, kind of marginalized, and largely on the sidelines as Europe is already in flames. After Pearl Harbor, we're a combat participant in what became the biggest war this planet's ever known. But for the U.S., it launched us from a little agrarian nation into a superpower. And Pearl Harbor was the one point, the dot on the paper you can see. Before this was simplicity, and after this was not. So it is a hugely important moment in American history, and it's worth talking about, I think. And the rest of it, as Patrick says, is what a hell of a hobby. I mean, nobody gets to play like this, and yeah, we're jealous of it, and we're careful who we let play with us. And there's good reasons for that. It's awfully intense, but what fun.
Good. Well, right now we're going to take a look at some footage from some various TORA performances. If you've not seen them before, take a look and make sure you find out where they are appearing and go see them live. So let's take a look at some of that video.
Yeah,
Well,
a lot of people come to us because they know a current TORA pilot, and they might be a friend or acquaintance of them, and they come around and we meet them, and they show up at TORA practice, and you need to be T6 rated. You need to have a commercial pilot's license. You need to have 1,000 hours of minimum flight time in anything. And then you need a formation card. And then you come to some air shows with us. And when it looks like we can tell that you're really sincere about putting your time and effort into this, you need to ride in the back seat of the airplanes for at least 10 rides over pyro. So the first time you ever fly the act, you're not startled by fire or whatever. And so that's just a part of the qualification process. And so, but we've seen people come in and fly with us a couple of years, and they decided that wasn't for them, and they go away, and then others show up, and their dedication is just undying. And you know those are the ones that are going to stick around for a long time. And I'll let Doug add to that.
Oh, that's sort of the nuts and bolts of it, and it. There are rules: 1,000 hours, the CAF check ride, the formation, and that's where you start. That's not where you end. Those are skills that translate into the air show environment, which is not the same as a Trey Ron clinic, at Westchester County on a Saturday afternoon. That's not what we're doing. But you got to have the basics, and those skills we can teach. I don't think we've ever run across anybody that's such a complete idiot we couldn't teach them to be a TORA pilot. The much more difficult part is the personality that it takes to be on the road with cantankerous, hard-headed airplanes, and an intense environment. That's you're sort of born with that. We don't have a lot of youngsters with us because it takes some level of maturity. And the reality is in that system, we're on the road a long time. We may be dealing with weather. Things may change. There's a lot of flexibility. You get out on an airline somewhere, you leave the airplane wrapped up somewhere. If people are going to show a bad side, it'll come out, and we just really probably aren't going to tolerate it very much. So when I say we're selective, that's what I'm talking about. It's not the aviation skills. If you're T6 rated in the CAF, you can fly the airplane.
Right.
It's dealing with the rest of the group that is the more unstructured, unwritten part of things that takes some time. And some of it is us getting to know you, and some of it is you getting to know us. And we have had folks that have done this for a couple of years and looked around and went, wow, I got safer things to do with my time. I can go play basketball or golf, or, something. So it's a two-way street. It's a tough thing.
Personality is definitely a big part of it.
True. And
getting along and being flexible.
Almost the same sort of criteria that the military teams go through. It's almost the same. It's like everyone has the same, not necessarily the same skill level, but they have the ability to fly the airplanes. But it's, can you get along with everybody else? What's your attitude? And TORA is also notorious for being one of those groups that walks the flight line after a show and shakes hands and is personable with the air show crowd and appreciates them coming out, shaking hands, signing autographs. It's all part of the TORA experience.
And that's a real difference in being a world-class air show act, let's say, and a participant in a fly-in.
Right.
You got to show the organizers, because we're expensive. I mean, we're all volunteers. These airplanes are expensive. Pyro is expensive. Yeah. You got to show the show organizers why they should bring you back. and that means getting out and talking to folks and waving at the kids and having a good time with the public. And it actually is a whole lot of fun. It scared me to death when I started. It did. It terrified me completely. I was like, oh,
really?
Oh yeah. All
Now,
these
Doug,
people out there.
Yeah, Doug, I've only known you a few years, but I would not have pegged you as someone who was shy.
Yeah, that's been a learned skill. Let's say that's something that you got to learn how to do.
Well, good, and there's a lot of fun that goes into it. But you've used a couple of words: safety, intensity. What actually goes into a TORA performance? I don't want to let any of the magic out, but how does all of this get choreographed and put together?
So we have very specific ground tracks and flight paths that each type of aircraft flies. The Zeros have a pattern, the Kates have a pattern, the dogfighters out front have a pattern. And those patterns are carved in granite. That there's no cowboy there. This is where you're going to have the airplane. This is the altitude you're going to be. This is how you're going to get there, and this is how you're going to get out. And there's no room for making up stuff on the fly. Absolutely. And that gets more complicated when we throw a P-40 or two in the overhead and maybe a B-17 or something like that. There can be 13, 14 airplanes in a tiny little bit of airspace. So we've got some tarps on the ground we use for markers, and your job, Patrick's job, my job is you put your airplane over the tarp. I don't care what else is going on. You put your airplane over the tarp and you leave at the other tarp because somebody else is in the airspace just right over there. So it's from that perspective, it's extremely rigid, and there's no forgiveness on a screw up. There can't be. It's just too crowded, too close, and too fast.
Right.
But also because of that, that's really pretty aggressive maneuvering, reasonably close to the ground, and there's fire and smoke coming up and pyro going off, and every single one of us will land after a show dripping sweat, and it's hard to peel the flight suit off, and now everybody's grinning and wants a beer. Yeah.
There you go. Well,
and add to that, so I think 23 will be Doug's 20th year because it's my 19th year and he got started a year before me.
Yeah.
Never in our part of this has TORA flown a show without briefing first.
Right.
Usually about an hour before we crank the engines, we find a quiet area or a room where we can all sit down and we brief the entire thing from engine crank to taxi in. And then we debrief after the flight. And so that's a big part of it. We never have gotten to the point where we just thought, we just did this last weekend and the weekend before. We don't need to brief. That's not even an option. We TORA briefs before every flight and after most flights. Sometimes the debrief can be as little, was everything all right? Did anybody see anything wrong? But the briefing before we fly is detailed. It's on a card, line by line, everything to cover, and that happens every time we fly.
Yes.
Each day.
Good point.
Yeah. And the point I was going to make is I've been privileged enough to be with the TORA team a couple of times, and I was going to bring that up, is that the briefing before, even though you've done this, and many of the pilots have, like you said, 20 years worth of flying, it's still that complacency that sometimes can get you, and to have that very serious briefing before, and then the debrief after. And in the debrief, for the pilots, you got to sometimes might have to have a little thick skin, because if you weren't exactly where you were supposed to be, someone's going to mention that, and
Yep.
you have to be able to take the praise with the criticism sometimes.
It's
Yep.
the debriefs can occasionally be blunt.
Sure.
small words and short sentences, and there's a great deal of meaning imparted in each one of them. I am told that the Blues and the Thunderbirds have similarly blunt debriefs, and the reasons are the same. It matters. It matters, and you work so hard to get better every single time we get in an airplane. It's worth the occasional bruise to the ego, and once in a while you just got to put it in your pocket, shake your head, golly, man, I muffed that up. But you get better next time, and you don't do it again, and off you go. And we all have. I mean, you can't fly this stuff this long without screwing something up, and we all have. But you put it in your pocket, learn from it, move on, and find new ways to make a mistake next time.
There you go. Well, we are here raising money for the TORA 0111. And Patrick, you've got a little video vignette here, which is going to outline our featured 12 plane for tonight.
Hi, I am Patrick Hutchins with the Commemorative Air Force, part of the TORA Squadron. This aircraft is part of the 12 Planes of Christmas this year, and let me tell you why. Last year at this very air show, this engine decided it was done. After 980 hours of great service, it had had it. So we all got together and we got this engine uninstalled, shipped it off to Oklahoma, where there's a company that rebuilds them. It came back 7 or 8 months later. We got back together again and we got the engine back installed and the airplane back in service. So this beautiful Pratt & Whitney 1340 600 horsepower engine has my airplane back in service, but as you can imagine, it wasn't cheap. So all we got to do now is pay the tab. So we're honored to be a part of the 12 Planes of Christmas, and I want to thank you for your support and invite you out to come see TORA.
Well, before we wrap up tonight, gentlemen, any final thoughts on 0111 or the overall TORA team?
I got to say that we've got some young pilots coming in now, good pilots coming in, and I think the youngest one is 22 right now, flying one of our Kates, and he came with all the qualifications, and so he had to start at a young age to have all that by 22. But I can see these airplanes and this program going on for who knows how much longer. I hope we're still around. I plan on being around 25 years to see the 75th anniversary. Probably won't be still flying in TORA, but I'd love to see them celebrate the 75th.
Great. Doug?
That's my job, right? Is to make sure that we have the business and the airplanes and the people set up that we can do this another 20 years. That's what I'm trying to do.
Excellent. Well, gentlemen, thank you for spending some time with us. Again, if you would like to contribute to help 0111, go to the 12 Planes of Christmas at the commemorativeairforce.org homepage and contribute. Please do so. The campaign runs through the end of the month, so you still have a couple of days yet for you to support this airplane and any of the aircraft in the 12 Planes of Christmas. Before we sign off tonight, Doug or Patrick, what's the website that people can see your schedule when it gets posted for the upcoming air show season?
Well, that is TORA.com.
There you go. And when will the official schedule be released?
Probably this week. I need to have Now let's call it next week.
Okay.
Give me a week to make this happen here.
All right. Wait for the new year to turn over and check out the calendar and see where TORA will be, hopefully near where you are. Again, gentlemen, thank you for joining us this evening, and thank you for watching. If you have ideas for future topics, please drop Leah Block an email at media@cafhq.org. Until next time, I'm Steve Buss for the Commemorative Air Force. Have a good night.